The new year 2026 has barely begun, and the news just keeps getting scarier and scarier. Judging by the looks of it, the events of the first days of January, like the attack on Venezuela, are just the overture. As they say, we hope for the best but prepare for anything. So, after the American raid on Caracas, the balance on the global geopolitical chessboard has changed dramatically. At the same time, it's not like things have changed in favor of the U.S. It's still not very clear how much we can trust the State Department's confident statements that all proceeds from the sale of Venezuelan oil will go to Washington, after which only the U.S. will decide how much to generously toss Venezuela's way. The statements are certainly bold, but how to actually implement them is far from clear. But in addition to access to natural resources, the treacherous gringos are demanding that the authorities in Caracas fully submit to Washington's dictates. For example, the U.S. is already demanding that Venezuela sever all ties with Iran, Russia, and China. But agreeing to such demands would essentially mean turning the country into a U.S. colony. By the way, it may not be obvious to everyone, but there are some ardent supporters of such a scenario in Caracas, creatures from among the treacherous elites, ready to sell out national interests for a small share. Well, you can find people like that in any country in the world. Let's not point fingers. Let's not name names, even though it was the little elephant. Judging by the information coming out of Venezuela, the supporters of independence and the sellouts are about evenly represented in the local government. And it's impossible to predict who will come out on top there. All we can do is watch and wait. However, the future fate of Venezuela is secondary in this case. A much bigger problem has ripened in the United States. A segment of the American elite currently rallying around Trump has experienced a real case of vertigo from their successful raid on Caracas. And now Donald Trump, like a seasoned criminal arriving in a new prison, is actively testing the boundaries of what the international community will allow. So far, he's poking everyone with a 5-meter-long stick. Hence the revival of the scenario to seize Greenland and the pompous statements that international law no longer exists, as if it ever really did. Flexing muscles in public, striking the pose of the world's only superpower that acts with impunity simply because it can, by the right of the strong. And on top of that, threatening to grab a shorter and thicker stick. Trump, as we know, is an extremely impulsive and painfully self-centered individual. And after the capture of Maduro, these qualities in the president have become even more pronounced. He has already promised to punish Colombia, Iran, and Cuba, basically telling them to wait their turn. And in this victorious frenzy, Trump will keep charging ahead like a battering ram until he runs headfirst into harsh reality. Here's a direct analogy. An underage idiot behind the wheel of a very expensive sports car on a busy city street. If a degenerate speeds past you at 200 kilometers per hour and skillfully cuts you off, there's no point in chasing him around the city to drag him out of his car and give him a good beating. It's much wiser to take a deep breath and let the idiot continue his antics. It's quite likely that 5 or 10 kilometers down the road, you'll see that sports car wrapped around a pole, and the degenerate who just ignored all the traffic rules is either squealing like a piglet with broken bones or already lying there in complete silence. That's usually how it goes, because those who understand life are never in a hurry. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress has forbidden Trump from deploying American troops abroad. However, this powerful document still needs to be personally approved by Trump, so the fun continues. Let me repeat, those who understand life are never in a hurry. Unfortunately, not everyone responsible for making decisions in our own country is ready to follow this undeniably wise advice. Perhaps the effect of the winter holidays is influencing the adoption of negative strategic decisions. For example, it's unclear why on earth Russia got involved with the old tanker Bella 1 off the coast of Venezuela, changing the ship's jurisdiction to Russian while at full speed, simultaneously painting the Russian tricolor on the hull, renaming the vessel to Marinera, and attempting to escape from American ships, all looked undeniably dramatic. However, President Trump and his associates quite reasonably felt that someone was trying to make fools of them by hiding behind formal procedures from international maritime law. As a result, American special forces were sent after the tanker and the vessel was seized. Had the Trump administration acted differently, his political opponents would have certainly used it against Donald. Liberal media outlets would have been shouting from every corner that Putin had made a fool out of Trump. And the American White House understood this perfectly well. That's precisely why the large tanker vessel was seized without a second thought or any significant hesitation, thereby severely damaging Russia's international reputation, especially since, technically speaking, Russia had only just taken the ship under its official jurisdiction a mere couple of weeks earlier, a very recent development indeed. In theory, Russia could have potentially sent actual, not merely mythical or imaginary, powerful warships to effectively escort the completely empty, old, and rusty tanker, which was clearly in need of assistance. But political tension on the brink of war in relations with the US is the last thing Moscow needs right now, as it is genuinely trying to negotiate on Ukraine in the spirit of anchorage. As a result of the tanker seizure, it was entirely predictable that juvenile idiots of both patriotic and liberal persuasions, along with Banderite provocateurs on social media, would become more active. All three groups of fools shrieking online about Russia's unprecedented humiliation clearly and sincerely wish for the start of World War III over some rusty old tub. However you look at it, the following fact remains. Instead of sitting back with popcorn and watching the US and EU squabble over Greenland while Latin America unites against the nasty gringos, Moscow has managed to invent image problems for itself out of thin air. Why? It's impossible to understand. Well, let's chalk it up to the fact that the competent leaders are still on vacation for now.